So I'm coming into this video asking myself something I never thought that I would. Is 2002 Bionicle the best year? Is it better than 2001? And it's hard for me to answer this question. No, if you know me personally, I love building Rahi. I love like everything about them, right? But I have to admit that the Rahi in 2001 are not perfect. In fact, that was like a pivotal moment for me because I always believed they were. And believing that meant that I never tried building my own for years. It took me up until about 2018 before I started building Rahi. And that's striking to me because in all that time, if I had been as prolific as I have been now, I could have technically over 1,000. I don't imagine that I ever would get there. That's an insane number. But I also didn't imagine I would ever get to 50 or 100 or 200. Like, I've gotten to those places and it's incredible. 2002 Bionicle, though, is definitely interesting because it does introduce my series favorite villains for Bionicle, if you can even classify them as that, the Borak. And I say that because in all reality, the Borak aren't technically villains. They serve a very specific purpose and awoken a little too early. But suffice to say, for all intents and purposes, they are the antagonist of that year. They are the foil to the Toamata. And as an actual concept, they're terrifying, in my opinion. A hive mind type creature is nothing new. We've definitely seen it before a lot in like science fiction and other fantasy worlds. But for the Borak, I think they do it really well. They're not so small as to be, you know, unstoppable on their own, but they're not so big as to be imposing in just numbers of one. But the fact that in that story they can curl up into a ball and roll away at top speeds, it's crazy, and I love seeing the animations of them doing so as well, but also the fact that they're supposed to be basically impervious within that ball form is honestly incredible. But it also serves a really good purpose as a toy, right? Being able to store it in its container like you could do with previous sets, but actually having that storage be a feature, a perk. And it's why the Borak got clear canisters rather than something like silver of the Toamata, right? To go on display. And I love that. I think that's honestly a fantastic thing, but it doesn't end there. I'm also a huge fan, if you don't know this about me, of the Borak Va. Of all of like the small sets from the early years, I think the Borak Va are the best balance of form, function, and of course, to boot, plenty of Rahi combination models. There are 4 of them officially. I've obviously designed many, many more, but overall, I think they're all pretty solid. Some definitely better than others, but the Borak Va themselves have a lot of interesting sort of solutions to problems that cropped up when the Taraga were designed. I mean, notably coming out in the year when the black friction pin was introduced was a huge help for them because the Taraga, as you know, have very wobbly arms. And that's just because those parts didn't exist yet. They weren't in LEGO's repertoire until 2002. Crazy to think about. And it's also why those pieces are kind of expensive, unfortunately, being that they only existed for 1 year from LEGO. But that said, the Borak Va are honestly kind of perfect to me. They have a little bit of error in the sake of like Levok Va, Nuvok Va, having the ball at the front of the face, but that's very easy for you to switch around, and I understand why LEGO did it that way. Maybe I'll go over it in a video where I talk about the Borak Va specifically. That said, earlier today I built the Exotoa, meaning that I've built, finally, all 3 of the major box sets to come out of 2002, not including the Master Builder set, which I also kind of have built as well, but just ignoring that for a moment. But all 3 of the major box sets for the first time ever. I've never done that before. I've never had the Boxer and Karak and Garak built and the Exotoa built all at once. And I think it's honestly kind of endearing to be like, I don't know what to compare it to. What I really like about 2002 is that it has a lot of simple functions to it. The Boxer as a premise is really easy to understand, but it's also a very good showcase for the type of function that it has. The Borak, kind of the same thing. Once you actually wrap your head around how the function works, it's dead simple, but it's so elegant in the way that it operates. Yes, I criticize them for kind of feeling like they're on the verge of breaking, and in some cases they can. I've never had it happen myself, but I've definitely seen it happen in lots. One of the pieces I have on mine is stressed already, and it is showing that stress when I use the function. But the fact that the function works in the first place is honestly incredible, and I think you could at least solve for that fragility problem by changing changing out the rubber bands, as I mentioned in the previous video. That said, the Exotoa. The Exotoa to me is a really hard set to criticize because it comes out in an era where large builds like that from LEGO were fairly static, right? So there are definitely like lofty criticisms that it needs to address, the bending of the knees, for example, and I guess that's a bit of a wordplay there, but also the fact that certain aspects of it can feel a little bit unfinished or underdeveloped. But at the same time, I think the totality of the model is honestly incredible. It's not perfect, don't get me wrong. The fact that it cannot incorporate the Onua set without slight modifications, or Pohatu set basically at all, is a bit unfortunate. But at the very least, if all you're going to be looking at on those characters is the legs coming out of the sides of the Exotoa, the arms coming out of the sides of the Exotoa, and of course where the head is located, I wouldn't be against displaying them in a normal Toa type stance, moving the head on Onua and even flipping over Pohatu. Maybe it's a bit blasphemous to do it, but you could have a story reason why it's done, or you can do what other people have done as well and redesign the Exotoa around those sets as well. I think that works too, but in some cases it can lead to some interesting results, let's say. And that said, there are a lot of people who have also addressed the bending knees, as I've mentioned, because it is definitely something you can address now with existing pieces, thankfully. But at the time that it existed, we didn't have anything like pistons from Bionicle, and so they can look a little bit off. At some point in time, I'm going to take on the task myself using classic pieces. We'll see how that goes. But overall, I think that the set is a fantastic display piece. Definitely, like I said, areas of it that could use improvement, but overall, it is a marvel in how pieces can come together and how well buttoned up, patched up they can look once they are put together in a very specific way. Because the Exotoa's building experience is just a masterclass in the design language that is LEGO Technic. In my opinion, it's not quite as complicated as something like the Destroyer droid from 2002, I believe. Don't quote me on that, it could be earlier, but Technic Star Wars, right? And both of those sets, to me, I hold in such high regard because of the functionality of each of those sets. One is much more heavily reliant on functions kind of operating in a specific order, which makes sense given its function. I'd highly encourage you to look up videos on the Destroyer droid, by the way. I don't have it right now complete, so I can't do a video for you guys, but I'd love to look over it in a future video. I used to have it. Unfortunately, I've only got part of it now. That said, though, 2002 is, in my opinion, an incredible year. There are definitely things to complain about. And I think the thing that is most unique about 2002 is that it has the capability of reflecting on its previous year, right? We know that the Toa Mata existed before the Toa Nuva did, but the Toa Mata came after lines like Robo Riders and Slicers, right? So those were different breeds of builds entirely. Had some similarities, sure, and you can definitely see the design language still in there as well. But 2002 is a follow-up to a highly successful year, and I think it honestly knocks it out of the park. It's very hard for me to say, honestly, if 2002 is better than 2001. I just am biased, and I don't think I'm ever going to be able to look past that. But I also can't classify it as worse than 2001 either, because I don't believe that's true either. I think it did everything that 2001 asked for it to do, and improved on it in a lot of ways. The functions are a lot more interesting in a lot of cases, even if I still prefer the Rahi over what we ended up getting. And of course, the Barag and the Exotoa are incredible sets as well. And the Boxer, if I haven't, addressed that already. But generally speaking, I think it's such a simple year, a simple premise, and it's done right. And that's really hard to do. And it's definitely hard to try and repeat that success over and over again, which I don't think LEGO was able to do. That's not to say that other years from later on in Bionicle, and I'll make dedicated videos talking about my thoughts on those years, are worse by any means, but they're at the very least different. And I think where it's hard for me to pick out the strengths of 2001 and analyze them against the strengths of 2002, I can do so for later years, because I do think that there are areas of 2003 that got somewhat worse than 2002, and possibly even areas of 2003 that got better than 2002 as well. It's hard for me to say. I know that there's the introduction of more posability, more movement, articulation on models in the form of like the Rakshi. That said, again, separate video. So all told, I really think 2002 is a fantastic year. It is a year with some fantastic combination models as well. Even the Borak combination model, which is a little bit janky, is really impressive. The fact that LEGO was able to create something so big from just 3 Borak, fairly small sets overall, by basically just taking it and running it over with the steamrollers. So, hey, it worked. And the models look pretty good for it. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, helps the channel out. And again, go check out the Skybirdmakes channel, brand new. I will link that one in the description of this video as well. Feel free to subscribe. Should be a video coming out there this weekend. Was going to be today, but I've slightly shifted plans. That said, thank you for the 20 plus of you that have subscribed over there already. I did not imagine it would go so fast. And with all that being said, you can check out the Discord, Instagram, and Patreon, all of which are in the description. I'll see y'all in the next one. Take care.